All right, everybody, it is surf time again. And as you can see on the title page here, we have a lunar eclipse, and it is very ultra positive. Now, it is going to require a little bit of mental acuity, and your perceptive field is very important here because it's competing. This positivity is competing with something that could be dire, negative, power struggle, etc. So we have some important work here to do, but look at our summary slide. It's all very congruent, above a 90%, I'd say, with a ultra powerfully positive eclipse. That's the big news this week. It's a full moon in Taurus, and it partially eclipses the moon. That light partially gets eclipsed, and it is conjunct with Jupiter. This is what makes it very expansive. But you know what? It's not just conjunct. It's also parallel. So the inclinations are the same, and should be able to see both of those as well. So that's really cool, really expansive, really positive. But it's offset by this Scorpio, Mercury, Mars in Scorpio, Sun, and a square off to Pluto. So you've got one powerhouse in Scorpio is Mars, one of the rulers, and squared off to the other ruler. So you have this power struggle happening. It's a T-square at the time of the eclipse. There's a lot happening, and we'll get down into the details, but the positive side again, let's look at that. We have the Dream Bot. It's nothing but super positive. And the I-Ching says overview. We'll talk about what that includes, but that's pretty much all of this. It's kind of a wave. You can't escape it. That's what this I-Ching 20 is. It's you're not going to be able to get out of feeling these energies and being exposed to these energies. So it includes everything on all the big things. It includes the Scorpio. By the way, it is a Scorpio backdrop all week. And that means that it's not just these three planets that are in Scorpio. It's the fixed water that all the planets are in is very, very strong. And it just so happens that Scorpio is the fixed water. And so we have a Scorpio backdrop. We also have a grand Earth trine at the end of the week, or the last half of the week. So a lot to discuss. So let's go ahead and get started. And it is my absolute pleasure to congratulate Not For Me To Say for winning this week's comment award, with honorable mentions going to Ravi and Milos. Wow, what a great cast of characters here, and I thank you all for commenting and helping out the algorithm for us. But it's also interesting to see and hear about your guys' experience with these energies. Speaking of which, one of those is the Dream Bot. Let's zoom in. You can see there's these only green arrows. I mean, green means go. It is a new beginning for humanity. Let me read linguistic set number 1. So these first two words in the linguistic set are initiate, init, beginning, humanity, finding, selection, extend, background, higher. So there's this expansive feeling. It's a new beginning feeling. And I'm almost thinking with all this Earth in the last half of our week, the grand Earth trine, it's it could be either correlated with or feel like or be analogous to the new Earth. So that's what I'm thinking. And it's very positive. Rays, dancing, transform, freedom, all, flu, all these big positive words. So there you have it. It's transforming, it's expansive, it's higher, it's humanity is in there. So wow, it's like a Aquarian dream, this run. All right, let's get back to, all right. Now here's the eclipse cycle, and this is an important chart. I added some stuff to this chart. Okay, and I decided to just add the full moons. So the full moons are down below because they all support the overall goal of the eclipse cycle. So our cycle just started with a Libra. And so every one of these new moons on top here is a new phase, a new lunar phase. And these are new beginnings in each one of them. So 29 days. But those lunar phases support the eclipse goal. The goal is Libra over the course of this 6 months until the next one is back to Aries. But all these full moons also support that. Now, the full moons, we do different recommendations. These are the sacrifices. These are the giving up points. And that is the big one here on October 28th. That's this CIRF week. The lunar eclipse, full moon in Taurus is where we're at. And this too will support the overall Libra section. And one interesting thing that I've seen now in 2 of these patterns and in 2 of these cycles, whatever we start with, new moon wise in the eclipse cycle, we also end with in a full moon. I don't know if anybody's ever noticed that before. If I'm the last one, well, I'll sacrifice my ego and say, I'm the last to know. But I thought that just in case, I will let you guys know as well. I thought that's interesting. Wherever we start with, whatever the new moon is, whatever the solar eclipse is in, the final full moon of that eclipse cycle will be the same sign. Maybe it's not true every time, but that's what we're noticing. And then in our energy graph, I've mentioned 2 already. I've mentioned the Scorpio intensity, and I've also mentioned the earthiness of the grand Earth trine. And it's not just the end of the week, but there is a lot of Taurusness that is developing all throughout, and it's crescendoing up into the eclipse. So you can see this big dip in the blue. That's the Scorpio. There's this big dip in Scorpio as it gets eclipsed, and that's going to be roughly 4.5 hours. It's a literal eclipsing. Now, it's only partial, but one of the things that the I-Ching is warning us about is to not underestimate its power. All right, even though it's a partial lunar eclipse, the energy is still big and profound and still will affect humanity. And so in that gap of Scorpio comes this big, bold, positive, powerful energy from Moon and Jupiter conjunct and parallel. Super intense. In fact, if I could go up higher on this chart, I would. I should probably somehow be able to diagram that. But that's what you have. And then the end of the week, we have the Scorpio backdrop, or the fixed sign backdrop. And then the grand Earth trine is including these big transformative and change powers like Uranus and Pluto, but it also includes relationships and finance. So big upheaval in all those. And it's in our material world because it's very earthy. All right, one thing that I didn't do, I sacrificed on showing you the next month because we've got so much to talk about and the influence is so important that I'm foregoing showing you November, and we'll just talk about that next time. Our CIRF week does go into November 1st, but there's not a lot that changes imminently. So we have the full moon. We also have these big events like Mars opposed Jupiter is a big one. So the setup, I mean, it's going to be really obvious. I've already shown you what the chart is last time, but the setup is these things oppose each other. And we'll look at the inclinations too, because that sets up either conflict or intensity magnitudes higher. And we'll talk about all those. So for example, Mercury and Mars, this black horizontal line is where Mercury and Mars are in the same inclination, or the same vertical angle. And that maximizes, that gets the closest on the 20th. Climax is on the 20th. So this brings in the intensity. So it's not just Mercury and Mars together, it's also Mercury parallel Mars. So it's extra, extra intense. All right, here we go. You want the details? Let's do this. Thursday, the 26th, we have both Mercury and Mars in a combust state. And it's, it's relatively loose, especially Mars is getting at about 6 degrees. So he's going to be set free here shortly, but still technically combust with the sun. And so weakened a little bit, just a little. There's nothing wrong with, where the Mars is placed other than in that light combust state. So lightly weakened, meaning that it might be just a tad hard to get things done. It won't be a lazy thing. It'll just be accessing the willpower to get things done. Maybe if there's any resistance there. But other than that, Mars is full up. And then you've got this conjunction developing where you've got Mercury and Mars. It's going to be outside of the combust state. So hold on. And this is going to oppose Jupiter. Jupiter in Taurus in a retrograde. And this is going to end up being conjunct with the eclipse. So harder and harder to find positivity in the world because these things are offset and offset strengthening. In other words, they're getting more and more perfectly aligned in an opposition, which means it's going to get harder and harder to find positive, expansive, wise things, or it's like one or the other. It's forcing your perception to either see the Scorpio intensity, power, versus the just chill and everything comes easy in things like worth and fine dining and experiencing things in Taurus. All right, so that opposition is developing. Then this is going to be a big source of our grand Earth trine is Venus. Venus trine Uranus and Jupiter. It's at the very end of the Jupiter. So this means we're built up towards big change and sudden change in finance, money, exchange. And why? Because Venus, not just relationships, but money and finance, is trying over back to one of her homes, which is Taurus. And this Taurus is much more about worth and value. And so that sways this part of here, the Venus part, into much more of economic finance kind of ideas and changes. But it does include relationships, so there's that. Waxing gibbous moon is in Aries, so this is perfect for what we need to do. It also goes into our solution this week. So we have Sidereal Aries, but that's for another discussion. That's for later. We're going to talk the solution and how to behave towards the end. But I will say waxing gibbous is a place where you put the accelerator down. We go back to our little resistance in Mars, but overall start getting your Libra goals done. Why Libra? Well, because that's our moon cycle that we're in. We're in a new moon of Libra for 29 days. Should have your Libra goals, and this is waxing gibbous time. In Aries is the power to get them done. Friday, the 27th, you can see the opposition to Jupiter is developing. The moon is approaching. So we're developing into our eclipse cycle, but it's more of an archetype at the sign level, like a Scorpio versus Jupiter, but basically an expansive type of Taurus, and they're in opposition to each other, getting tighter. So the intensity, maybe vindictiveness, growing faster than hope and seeing the silver lining. So you can see you have a chance of your perception being pulled away or being hijacked, and you won't see or feel this big positive wave that happens, right? So there's your risk. Make sure that you start practicing things like gratitude. This will force your perception to not only see pessimism, only see negativity. Oh, forgot to mention the square off to Pluto. This really makes it hard. It's a pressure to transform death and rebirth to ego. Ego's in stress. Ego is in the deep waters of Scorpio, so emotional, but sticky emotional, deep, dark places. It can be scary for those who aren't used to this area, squared off to Pluto, so it sort of feels pessimistic. But here we are. It eclipses on Saturday the 28th. Goes exact around 3:23, but I'm going to show you a place where you can get the times for your particular place. And what we want to do is consider that the eclipsing is happening in a window of to this particular one about 4.5 hours or close to that. The energy from Scorpio, the big energy, the intense energy. Look at that. We got Mars and Mercury in roughly just less than 1 degree. So very tight in conjunction, but also very tight in parallel and inclination. So it's extra intense, very intense. And we've got the intensity sign, Scorpio. So it's uber intense, right? And so for that window, this intensity gets blocked by the Earth. And what you're left with is nothing but a beautiful conjunction here. And look, Moon and Jupiter are also parallel. So that makes this side intense. It's intense on both sides of this equation. It gets blocked by the Earth. And now you're just left with 4.5 hours of everything Taurus. Beautiful, positive, as confirmed by the Dreambot. New hope, maybe new Earth. This is an Earth sign. So, oh gosh, I hope so. I hope maybe you feel what it feels like, maybe for 4.5 hours or so, or sometime in that window, when you have this sort of new hope for what the new Earth looks like, and possibly a gateway to it. But at the same time, we have that T-square on Pluto. So there is a chance that even though this energy is blocked, there's a chance that your perception will only see the negative, pessimistic side and will refuse to acknowledge this big positive wave. But I think it'll be more intense than what we make it out to be. Don't confuse the intense of the Moon and Jupiter with just the Scorpio-ness intensity on its own. This is uber intense, and I don't mean that lightly. Both sides of this opposition that creates the eclipse is extremely intense, and it has nothing to do with the Scorpio. I mean, Scorpio adds to it, don't get me wrong, but it's these parallels on both sides and conjunctions that really make it extra intense. All right, finance and relationships are changing as well. And when we talk about a full moon, we are talking about releasing something. So we'll get to that in the solution. So hang on to that, because I want to put all the recommendations in one place. Don't want you to get confused. But one more thing here about this alignment. So 3:23 p.m. Central Daylight Savings Time is when Sun opposes Moon. So that's it, technically at the time of the full moon, but the eclipse happens a little bit before that and a little bit after that. All right. So 1 hour prior to the exact time of full moon is the intense fighting versus hope expressions. So basically, let's see hold on. I'm trying to figure out something that goes exact. Let me pause it. All right. It's the Mars opposed Jupiter that goes exact. So Mars and Jupiter 1 hour prior to the exact full moon. So they're still within the eclipse window, by the way. What we have happening is Jupiter and Mars in a perfect opposition. And so then the Scorpio thing is blocked at the penumbra. And we'll talk about that here. This is where you're going to be able to see the partial eclipse. And what I wanted to do, this is the place where you can go, and I'm going to click on it now, but it's called www.timeanddate.com/eclipse/lunar. And then you can find the date. But what I'll do is bring that over here, and I want you to see what this thing looks like. This is what's going to happen. So the penumbra is going to be a light shade over the moon, and that's going to envelop the whole moon. And then this at the bottom right here, this is where the partial eclipse happens. And you can see how it's just barely, eclipsing the very dark eclipse of the moon. So you're not going to see a blood moon, but if you're in that area, you're going to see the actual partial eclipse. So those people who are going to see the eclipse, are mostly in Africa, Europe, Asia, all those areas. If you're on the extreme northeast coast of North America and South America, you just see a very edge of it. So barely see, you won't see any of the partial. You'll see the penumbra, so the light shadow on the moon is all you'll see. But I encourage you to go here and get the specific window and time so you can see how that was about a 4 hour, that video that I showed you, about 4.5 hour window where the light, the packets from Scorpio are eclipsed by the Earth. And so all you're left with is very expansive, positive Taurus kind of things. Sunday, the 29th, now we have Mercury conjunct Mars. This is exact. And this is at 9:02 a.m., the day after the eclipse, the 29th. And so extremely tight, but also in parallel. So all these events, it just seems like the biggest events all have an intensity that's increased just by the inclinations. So very, very special week, but event. The eclipse is very, and then the seemingly non-related things like Mercury and Mars, perfectly exact at 53 minutes, 11 degrees, 53 minutes of Scorpio. They're technically both combust still, so both weakened, but super intense together. And that's going to be thoughts and yang and ability to fight, ability to get things done. Your yang and your mental acuity and logic are extremely correlated in a Scorpio backdrop. So intense, very powerful, very passionate, and can be vindictive if you go to an extreme. Easy to do that. Now we start the Grand Earth Trine, all right? Monday the 30th. It's a waning gibbous moon. So we're post-full moon, post-eclipse, but a Grand Earth Trine, and it's a very tight one from Venus to Uranus. So with the moon has just progressed past Uranus, when that passes through, it's big focus on change, big emotional feelings of, and when we look at the dream bot, it feels positive. Any change is going to feel positive just because of the nature of this eclipse. But that sounds like an oxymoron, because change to the psyche is stress, because we have to adapt. Anytime you have to get out of your comfort zone, that's adaptation, that's stress. So a lot of you will interpret that as negativity. But this Grand Earth Trine even though the backdrop is, and I need to show you this, but water is heavy with 5 planets and fixed is 5 as well. So it's dominant. Water, fixed. Fixed water is Scorpio, and that matches with the conjunction happening and the extra intensified Mercury and Mars. So in the backdrop of this energy is a heavy amount of Scorpio, and it's not just these 3 planets in Scorpio. It's all the other fixed signs and planets in fixed signs, and then all the planets in water signs. So we got Saturn and Neptune helping that out. But all in all, the whole thing put together is a Scorpio backdrop, but you have to acknowledge that there's a lot of change and a lot of transformation in relationship and finance in this grand Earth trine. So that's why I'm saying it's grounded. So when you're changing, you're adapting. The worst signs are in adaptation are the Earth signs. So it's sort of an oxymoron that things are changing, but somehow it feels grounded. Somehow it feels real. And it's not just that day. It's through Halloween, the spooky, scary Halloween. You can easily feel grounded despite things are changing and transforming. Despite things are struggling and intensified in Scorpio. Despite this, Scorpio is opposing Jupiter in a very tight alignment. And so it feels hard to find hope and positivity, except when you get out into the real world, you can start seeing evidence of transformation and change, and it feels real. It feels calming. Not so scary. And then Wednesday, the first, intense conflict. Look at now, the inclination chart is contra-parallel. All of this contra-parallel. The big ones are Venus and Neptune. We also have Mercury and Uranus. We have Sun and Jupiter, all in contra-parallel, 4 of them. What does that mean? It means extremely conflicted. So our Scorpio now is not just opposed to Taurus, it's conflicted with it. So extra conflicted. And we end this week with intense conflict. We have the intensity of Scorpio and the fixed water. And we have the conflict by our contra-parallel chart. So back to sort of feeling hard to feel positive about things. But it's there, and the positive is there. You just have to be able to look for it. All right. Are you ready for the I-Ching? It's just overview, Hexagram 20 overview. Overview calls for composure and contemplation. Yes, we will do that. Do not underestimate the power of this force. Do not underestimate the power of a partial lunar eclipse. Like the wind blowing across the treetops, its presence is perceived through the effect it has on everything it touches. So it'll touch this energy this week. All things considered, will touch every human being. And even if you can see the eclipse or not, you'll be able to be affected by it. Discern the difference between what is deep and what is shallow within yourself. Rhythms and cycles that guide all creation. That's in this energy that you'll be aware of. And line 3 says, introspection does not mean escaping into a fantasy world of your dreams. If you are one that feels the pessimism and can't seem to get out of it, I highly recommend starting with, just don't go into a fantasy world. Don't do escapism this week. And before we tell you what to do, let's summarize what we have for the influence. October 26th to November 1st, a predominantly Scorpio backdrop for the week brings out the intensity, compulsivity, vindictiveness, maybe some secrecy that fixed water energizes. However, on October 28th. All this gets literally eclipsed at the full moon in Taurus for about 4.5 hours. Since Jupiter is conjunct and parallel to this event, it becomes an extremely positive, fortunate, and even gregarious energy on October 28th that seeks high value and extreme sensory inputs. And it's very intense, not just because of Scorpio, but it's very intense because of the parallel alignments. It's a Taurian celebration. The remainder of the CIRF week has a Scorpio theme, but grounded or even shorted by a powerfully transformative grand Earth trine. And transformative change is indicated in this grand Earth trine. I know it's an oxymoron. It seems like a paradox. Seems ironic. Or not, I think more oxymoron. Hey, how do you have easy feel-good change? Well, we explained it. Could it be that we have a new Earth? Oh, man, I want it so bad. All right, let's get back to our work here, and let's transition over to the solution. 53, steady pace. This is nothing new, is it? We've been having steady pace for a long time now. Why change now? Steady development in your depths is what sustainable long-term progress possible. You can't expect to have everything all at once. Development must be free to run its course. Events must be allowed to unfold in their natural time. That goes back to the cycle again. Recognize you're in a cycle, multiple cycles. We talked about that in the onset. You're in a Libra eclipse cycle with Libra goals in this new moon phase. And you're in a full moon lunar eclipse. So there's things that are needing to be done there. We'll get to that later. Neither rushed nor manipulated. In this way, you will achieve and enjoy long-lasting relationships as well as success in the world. Here's our conversion chart. This is the exact time of the full moon in Taurus, 5 degrees, 9 minutes of Taurus. That puts us in Hexagram 27 of the Rave Mandala, and it gives us Sidereal Aries. I will explain all these, and I'll give you the triangulation, but we'll start with the Rave. So this is nourishment. The full moon eclipse goes exact at 5 degrees, 9 minutes. That puts us in gate 27 of nourishment. So line 4 shows us generosity as opposed to line 3, which is greed, sort of the opposite. So line 4 is generosity, meaning the natural sharing of attained abundance, the gift of rewarding those who are deserving, the power and strength to share generously. So that's very interesting. We have an Aries sidereal, that is get out and do things for self. And then we have a very extroverted, very outward giving hexagram in the Rave. So how do we sort that out? Well, I'm glad you asked. So remember, as we do the solution slide, we have steady pace. Just keep going. And this is a great time to get your Libra goals done. And then the Rave says sharing your abundance. This is a rabbit in the middle of all these carrots. There's no way that the rabbit's going to be able to eat all these carrots. So the Rave says, why don't you give some of that away? And that is a match over to the full moon, because remember, moons are an opportunity to give away. Normally we're sacrificing something, and that's the difference. So this is a new version of sacrifice on this new moon. Full moon. Full moons are typically sacrificing something, and it's suggested the sacrificing of things that aren't working for you much anymore. Well, not this one. This one's the exception because we are supposed to be sharing abundance. So now we're going to correlate these together. The full moon and the Rave mandala we're going to be giving of something very meaningful to us because we're going to include that where the full moon is happening. Now we have the Sidereal Aries for the week. So that gives us a very Aries set of traits that we can look to. And here we go. This is a really big energy. This eclipse cycle, this Scorpio backdrop, this grand Earth trine, and all these changes is big energy that will require quite a bit of conscientiousness to successfully navigate. So the first step is to not get lost in the emotional experiential saturation. No dissociating and no escaping. That's what we were given in the steady pace. And also we were given in the first I-Ching. Use the strong earth alignments to keep a steady pace. This isn't a race, even though the energy is quite motivating. You are free to bring out some egoism and bravely strive for pure authenticity with Sidereal Aries. So strive for being yourself. That's the gift, the big gift that we get from Sidereal Aries, because you spent 6 months prior to this finding yourself, finding your inner warrior, and now you get to convert back around and then demonstrate it. So you're demonstrating your true self, your authenticity, and being brave to do that. And with that confidence, boldly share things of value throughout the week. That's the Rave Mandala, is sharing. Now you can achieve much more, karmic points, if you will, by taking something of really great value to you personally and sacrifice it. That's in quotes, because we're supposed to be sharing the abundance. So we're not giving things that aren't working for us anymore. I mean, you can do that, but the extra points go to those who are taking something that you may not want to give away, but you are in abundance of it. It doesn't have to be something material. It can be ideas. It can be concepts. In order to, the things that help you. Now, if you share those, can help others. So the only requirement is this thing that you're in abundance of has to be of great value to you. Now, this is a real sacrifice because you're giving it to others, right? And it can be monetary, but it doesn't have to be. This is the direct overlap between the moon phase and Rave 27. Do be careful with the Aries aggression. This triangulation isn't focused on defensive posture, but rather egoically giving of your true, authentic self. So, now not too egoic, because you're not expecting anything in return. So, at my best guess of what we will get on our return for our investment or our sacrifice or our sharing is going to be an intrinsic reward. So, feeling heart full, feeling connected to others, feeling closer to our divine self. That's the return you're going to get. And I think it'll be well worth it. All right. Does all that make sense? Let me know in the show notes or let me know in your comments if that makes sense or not. Now, let's get into the runes. I'm excited about these runes. But first, it's brought to you by Intervention Therapy. We all want inner peace. So go to intervention.com. All right. We have Gabu. This is for our Libra. Remember, we're in a double cycle currently, or our 29-day cycle, Libra, new moon, and a 6-month Libra cycle for the eclipse. Balance, harmony, partnership. I'm going to use this to develop the more Libra type traits. And those are going to be in equality, justice. These are the ones that I have more of a problem with. Not particularly relationships or mediation or negotiating. I think I'm pretty good in those. but maybe compromising, fostering generosity, that kind of stuff. All the other, like maybe balance, I'll work on those and become a better part of my Libra arsenal. And then the Yera, we haven't used this one before. Let me zoom in. Yera is going to look like that. And what it is about harvest reward, natural cycles. You can be used for staying in harmonious relationship to time and season. There's a season for everything. And so just being in tune with that is going to be extremely important. And then why Yera, the main reason why I brought that up is to be fearlessly sharing this week, sharing of things of value, sharing of your abundance, things that you have plenty of. This is your chance to practice giving, okay, and growth and increase. But you're also, when you're using this rune, you're increasing or you're attracting fertility, bringing desired events, relationship to time and cycles, growth and increase. So the statement that I want to use this week is, I am true to my highest and most authentic expression. And that includes giving effortlessly, but also without expectation of return is the best way to do that. Yeah, I know it's not Christmas, but we did the triangulation, and that is the most successful week that you can gain with your behaviors if you do these things that are on this slide. Do these, do this, and you will get the most success out of this week. All right, everybody. Thank you for being here. Welcome to all the new folks here. I'm glad to see our channel is growing, mainly on YouTube. Don't see a lot of growth on the other platforms, but I appreciate you guys too over on Rumble and BitChute, and I'll just keep posting over there. Take care, everybody. Have a kick-ass week. Find the positive, find the expansive, and give of your true and authentic self. See you next week.